you remember the time when we were one with the sun and all the joy that we had? 'Cause in our hearts we were one. The point was focused on us, and we enjoyed this dream. In and out at our will, saturated auspiciously. Star people come down, we are preparing to be with you again. Star people come down, we are preparing to be with you again. We've been missing and missing and missing and missing and missing the point of who we are and why we came. And as this reality deceives us, we get caught and lose our aim. We get in the way of ourselves, and we dismiss the call. We get in the way of ourselves, and we make it so hard. Star people come down, we are preparing to be with you again. Star people come down, we are preparing to be with you again. So as we sit around and contemplate with the thoughts of the way it could be, and as we swing back and forth, one day we will awake from this dream and see that you are here as you have always been, guiding from a varied symmetry. And as promised through our evolution, one day we'll be free. Star people come down, we are preparing to be with you again. Star people come down, we are preparing to be with you again. Star people come down, we are preparing to be with you again. Star people come down, we are preparing to be with you again.
Mic check 1 2. Mic check 1 2. All right. Peace and love. Peace and blessings. Peace everything to everyone this evening. This is Wednesday, February the 4th, 2026. And this is episode 3 of this new phenomenon this new adventure, this new experiment called Moments with Malik. And as I had said the last time I was on, this is me building this airplane while it is in the air. Um, but sometimes when your mind can sometimes go faster than your mouth can speak. And sometimes the words that you intend to say with all intentions um, lags behind your thought, and you kind of mish and compress. Well, not compress, but you kind of mish and match some of the words that you are thinking versus the words that you were speaking. So the last time I was on the show, I made a reference about we was building this train while it's in the air, but it's like that sometimes. I mean, I went over the video, which I quite often do. Every um, Quite often I go back and I critique myself and critique the work that I'm putting out. And I say this, and I've said this before, that it's important for me to critique myself, to kind of look at what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, my delivery, my approach, the information that I'm providing, the content, making sure the content is not only is it credible, but it's always also presented in a way that um, it's comprehensible to those who come in and view the show. However often they do it, when they do it, I always want to make it entertainment, but I also want to make sure the information that I'm giving um, is information that's factual. So I go back time and time again to go back and review old shows just to make sure that the information that I'm providing is number one is credible information, but to also see how I'm delivering my message, see how I'm delivering the information, and sometimes when we're doing this work as the novice that I am, because I've been doing this for what consistently for about 2.5 years. Well, and it's actually hasn't been that long. I started this in 2023, so I mean this is in November 2023, so it'll be 3 years in November. So I'm still new at this. I'm still a baby, uh, sitting behind um, sitting behind a mic and having discussions um, to the outside world. And it gives me a new found respect for those who do this every day, those who make this a commitment to do it every day. I do it well, actually 4 times a month, in back-to-back days, Wednesdays and Thursdays. And I understand the efforts that are put forth to even just to put together the shows that I do twice a month or 4 times a month. Um, it requires a lot of time. Even in preparation, of course, it requires a lot of time, but it also requires a lot of practice and approaching a level of comfort that where when you are communicating on this mic, that you kind of take your time to slow down and articulate your message so that your mind doesn't run ahead of your voice or run ahead of the message that you're speaking. But sometimes that does happen, as I mentioned last week, or excuse me, 2 weeks ago, when I made the statement that I'm building this. My intentions were to say I was building this plane while it's in the air, but it came out as I'm building this train while it's in the air. But there's a few other things that in the second episode of Moments with Malik that I mentioned, um, with good intentions, but the information that I mentioned was not accurate. Um, I was talking about NATO, and I mentioned it as it being North American uh, treaty um, organization, but it's not North American. It should have been North Atlantic. And again, sometimes when your mind is racing. You kind of say things that are most familiar to you in your day to day life, words and things that are familiar to you. Not often are we speaking about NATO, so we know that it is an acronym, um, but we don't speak out the entire phrase. We usually just say NATO, but I made the mistake in saying North American Treaty Organization, but it actually is North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So I just want to put that on record. Um, yes, it was a mistake. It wasn't intentional, and I'm back here to correct the record to make sure that that correction gets heard. So we are here in the month of February, which is always an important month for us in our community. Um, Not so much as it's yes, it has significance where the country recognizes the 28 days of this month being taken honor in our history or Black history, which is quite important. It's very important for us to study these things, even if the country itself collectively does not recognize it or has gone crazy with their attempts to wipe out everything that's anything that's historical information regarding us in our community. It's still our responsibility to teach um, to teach us to teach our community and to teach our history. We shouldn't rely on someone else to be teaching our history anyway. That was one of the many things that not only Malcolm said, but many of the scholars that were in the community made the reference that you don't send your enemy, your child or your children, you don't send your children or expect your enemy to teach your history. You don't. That's not something uh, you would ever want to do if you were progressive in knowing the importance of you teaching your history yourself. So we shouldn't be relying on someone else to teach our history. Um, but this again, this is the day, this is the month that is recognized as Black History Month. Well, we know Black history is not just you know there is not any by any stretch of the imagination could 28 days do justice for the history that we have as Black people or African people here in the West, celebrating this day for 28 days. So we should actually be treating this day as a summarization of what we teach for the other 11 months of the year. And when February comes back around, we come back and we kind of recap and summarize what's been taught, building up our brand, building up the information within the school systems, within the community, or where after school programs, whatever it is, whatever facilities or that we're utilizing to teach our history. By the time February comes back around, we should be able to come back and give a report that says we did X, we did Y, we did Z for 11 months. Particularly teaching the babies the knowledge, the information, the history. But this is the centennial of Black History Month, which started off as Black History Week and then eventually became Black History Month, started by, we know that we, hopefully, those who are viewing me now and those who listen to me in the archives know that Carter G. Woodson was the scholar, the ancestor, the elder who started Black History Week. And, you know, day one, February the 1st, every year, we should always pay homage to him and the work and the efforts that he put forth. But this being the centennial of Black History Month, um, it should be regarded or seen as you know as something that's a milestone that's very important to us. It's important to us because we need to know how significant our history is and how important it is to hold on to, because we seeing things that we're beginning to see attempts to be able to wipe us out of history, whether it be the achievements that we've accomplished collectively as a people, or the atrocities that we suffered as a people. We see these attempts um, consistently, what they call now sane washing. I identified as the, not, sane washing, yeah, but also trying to whitewash history, trying to sanitize history, to extrapolate the horrors that existed and still exist. To be honest with you, still exist, but the horrors how the development of this country came about. Um, they've had blood on their hands. It's had blood on its hands since its beginning, and the key to that validation to what the blood that's the bloody hands that have been a part of the history of this country since its beginning. The key to that, the factual key to that, is the history of us Black Americans or African people here in this country. So, so it is important for those who do not want to, who are trying to sanitize history, trying to whitewash history, trying to sane wash history. It's important for them to do whatever's necessary to completely wipe us out or wipe our history out um, of the records. Um, some anecdotal, or just an anecdotal story here. And and I'm going to tie this in. This is why it's important. In our family home, and of course, we lived in several different homes growing up, but um, in my late teens, um, my mom and my siblings, um, actually, my mom and my two sisters at that time, because my oldest brother had moved out, was gone. So it was my two sisters and myself, me being the youngest child, um, had moved to a new home, which we had become quite comfortable with. And stick with me, because this is not relative to the statement or the message that I want to bring, but it is significant. I have to bring a foundation. But it was a beautiful home, townhouse, um, with one problem. Our next door neighbor had a willow tree, and every so often that willow tree, the roots, if anyone's familiar with the willow tree and how aggressive the roots of that tree are, every so often the roots of that tree would infiltrate the plumbing system uh, on that line, on the main line, and would grow and eventually it would clog up or back up the entire sewer system, sewage in that entire row of those that whole entire row of townhomes, and it was quite a mess. And no matter what was done or whatever attempts that our next door neighbor had made attempts to do, the strength in the roots of that tree would always come back and invade that sewage line. So the only way to eventually eradicate and resolve that problem was they had to kill the roots. Even after he had cut down the tree, cutting down the tree wasn't stopping the problem because the roots were still active. And the only way that he was able to fix the problem was to drill holes into the base or into the trunk of the tree and drop root killer, some type of solution called I don't know the entire the name of the root killer, but it was something that was designed to kill the roots of a tree. So the only way that he was able to do that was he had to drill holes into the trunk of the tree and drop that solution into the tree, into the trunk of the tree that eventually made its way down and killed the root of the tree. And that resolved the problem. So when preparing to put together tonight's show, I wanted to use that anecdote as a metaphor regarding what's happening to us and our history here in this country. Because once the roots of that tree were killed, the existence of that tree was completely gone. There was no trace of that tree ever again. But as long as those roots stay alive and stayed thriving and stayed um, had access to a system that sustained itself. In this particular case, it was the water that was coming through the sewage pipes. As long as it had access to that, it will continue to thrive, and the trunk of the tree will continue to live. So they had to kill the roots of that tree in order for the entire tree to die. So I pulled out this anecdote. I want to tell this story because the best way that you can kill out of people or kill off of people, because we all know that as long as there's a level or access to recordation where someone is recording history, as long as someone is diligent enough to record history, regardless of whether the people themselves are completely murked in history, if there's a record that still exists, that record ties the existence of that people, ties it back to the existence of that people. But if you are able to kill out or kill off the roots, kill off the information, kill out the history or destroy the history of a people, that completely destroys the existence of that people altogether. There's a story about the the Tasmanian people in Australia, where it being a British colony, settled in this community identified as as the Tasmanian people. And because Europeans, and I know you'll probably, I mean, whether I really care or not, because history is history, fact is fact. You know, let the truth bear out. Wherever these so-called colonizers went, whatever land they stepped foot on, they were killing and murking people every place they went. So uh, the British Empire found its way into the community of the Tasmanian people. And because they had an interest in the land and in the land for whatever reason, wanted to take over the land, but they couldn't do that if the indigenous people still occupied the land. The same story just happens to be repeated here. So as the story goes, the Tasmanian people were putting up a resistance and trying to hold on to their land, but of course, the British Empire at that time they were the most bloodiest and murderous people in that era, and they proceeded to wipe out the entire community of Tasmanians. It was so bloody that nobody survived. And this is, of course, they were exercising this brutal and heinous act over a number of decades until the last two Tasmanians existed, where they are now, as the story goes, or had been on display in a museum. And now all you have is a cartoon by Warner Brothers where they're talking about the Tasmanian devil. So they attempted to wipe out the people of Tasmania. And if it wasn't for the historical record, they would have vanished off the face of the earth entirely. So this is why it's important for us to maintain history, accurate history, and not allow those who have a other motive involved to try to sanitize the atrocities that were perpetuated on the people whom they decided to kidnap, put in chains, sail across an ocean, and settle in a land that which their captives had already stolen from the indigenous people who were here, and force some people to whom they had kidnapped, force those people to work for free. And if it wasn't for the history, the telling of the history accurately, those who are existing today in this era wouldn't know anything about it. So it's important to teach the history and to preserve the history. We see in this 100th anniversary of Black History Month where Black history has been under attack consistently and constantly, trying to change the narrative, trying to rewrite history in favor of those who were the perpetrators of crimes against humanity. So they've come up with different terminologies to try to win favor of those who do not want to allow this history to continue to be in the historical record. So you see it under attack quite often. They started to remove um, statues of prominent African people in history. They started to erase stories on the government websites of prominent African people, claiming that these persons like Jackie Robinson and Paul Robeson and Harriet Tubman and countless others were DEI and didn't deserve their place in history. So they've been working day and night to try to find ways to move us out of the public record. The attack on the museums to remove exhibits, factual exhibits at that, to remove factual exhibits from museums so that our story wouldn't be told. Taking down statues so that our story wouldn't be told, banning books so that our story wouldn't be told, threatening the education system not to tell our story or not to teach our story in the schools so that our story wouldn't be told, telling the students in different areas of the country like Florida and Texas, where the subject of slavery comes around, teaching the students, babies who have impressionable minds, that the slaves loved their masters and we weren't nothing but indigent servants. Because they see that their historical record, the role that they played in crimes against humanity, the role that they played in wiping out an indigenous people on this land, and then taking and kidnapping a group of people from a foreign territory, from a different continent, and bringing them across waters on slave vessels, kidnapped vessels in horrendous conditions, forcing them to lay down in the bottom of boats for 30 days or more, not willing to tell that history so that they don't look like they perpetrated crimes against humanity just so that they can save their own face. But just as I said about that, the anecdote about the tree and its roots, as long as the roots are strong, the tree stays alive. And it's important for us to maintain this and preserve this record, preserve this historical record. It's important for us, regardless of whether they want to do what they feel is going to ease their conscience of the crimes that they're committed on a group of people. Do what the hell they want to do with it, but it's still our responsibility to teach our history. We can't allow our history not to be told correctly. Brother Malcolm, that beautiful brother, this is the quote he made. And this is the full quote. And some of us have only been introduced to a portion of the quote, But this is the full quote. This is what he made. Of all our studies, history is best qualified to reward our research. And when you see that you've got problems, all you have to do is examine the historical method used all over the world by others who have problems similar to yours. And once you see how they got this straight, then you know how you can use, then you know what to use to get yours straight as well. That's the entire quote. That's why it's, again, in the importance of us preserving our history, because we are still in a problem in our communities and throughout this entire country. There is still a juggernaut of a problem that exists that I identified and defined last show 2 weeks ago, Moments with Malik, of white psychopathy. And if you go back and listen to that show, one moment. And if you go back and listen to that show, you will see how I laid it down and defined what white psychopathy is, but I'm gonna read it again. So white psychopathy is a pathology created by white men, some white men, not all white men, some white men, by white men who believe within the confines of the made-up construct of race that white men are superior to all other persons on the planet. Under this pathology, they believe that they were given the rights by their God to rule and control over all of the peoples on the planet through the means of money, politics, education, religion, or force. So this juggernaut, which really, in my opinion, is nothing but a paper. We see it as a juggernaut, but it's really a paper tiger. So white psychopathy and racism is the problem that that this country itself is still trying to get over its hurdle. They can't find a way to get over this hurdle because you have a group of people, powerful men, using their influence and power through money, because money dictates and controls everything. They have the money and the resource to be able to manipulate messaging, to manipulate information, to censor information that will help the entire collective of people. Because they do not want to be looked at as people or descendants of a people whom created crimes against humanity. They find ways to be able to censor the information. But we must keep the roots alive. And this is why it's important for us to teach the truth. Not 1 month out the year, 365 days of the year is our responsibility to do that, not anyone else's. And when our voices are heard and when we speak much louder than the echo chamber that continues to promote white racism and white psychopathy, when we continue to be committed in teaching the truth, we have the ancestors on our side backing us. And they're going to ride or die with us. If you're liking the message that I'm putting down tonight. Like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend, tell 10 friends, tell a family member to come and join us on the Health Walk and me on Moments with Malik. So so what are we doing here? What's happening here? While you see that the opportunities have been taken to eradicate and erase us out of history, why is it important for us to continue to teach Black history? Books are important. And remember, as I said before, they've done everything they could do to try to take books off the bookshelf. Don't even want certain books in the library. They were making attempts to remove what they so-called woke books or DEI books out of the libraries of public schools so that the children wouldn't have access to uh, this information. Books like The Miseducation of the Negro. And from what there was some schools in Florida where they were taking Afrocentric books out of the school, out of the libraries. They were keeping books like um, The Bell Curve that was published in the 90s when it was talking about the inferiority of the Black race. And they were using so-called scientific methods to prove their theory that we as Black people or African people were inferior to white people. White psychopathy. White psychopathy. So they took books out of the school so that we wouldn't, so our children, and not just our children, but all the children who were in the school wouldn't have access to the information because they wanted to continue to cloak the lie of this white superior race and that they've been this benevolent people and that no dark marks existed in the history. Where the history is replete all over the place of the things that they've done. If you don't have this book in your library, family, get it. Amongst other books that I can recommend for us to read tonight, and I have recommended the text by the beloved sister Frances Quest Welsing, The ISIS Papers. Put that in your library and teach it to your children. It's not their responsibility to teach our children. And while you're doing that, pick up David Walker's Appeal. Short book. But he had in his news column, he was writing about, well, he was making indictments against the white Christian church. And he was saying that how can you consider yourselves to be Christians when you are every day committing crimes against people of color? How can you? I mean, this is not the teachings of the person whom you claim you follow. You are a hypocrite. And that was his appeal that he was writing in his paper, publishing in his paper. Pick up a copy of David Walker's Appeal. But in their efforts to, in this current situation, this current era, with these bloodthirsty madmen in the current administration, as they continue to launch an insult on our history, they're doing whatever they can do to preserve their own history, regardless of how heinous it was, and putting up statues of Confederate soldiers who, in the light of it all, those who do not want to indict them with the entire crimes that they committed. They use like words that, well, they were traitors to the country. Well, they were a whole hell of a lot more than that. But this administration has made it a campaign to go around the country and resurrect statues. If you want to consider yourself to be patriotic, consider yourself patriotic and say, well, I do not agree with your campaign to resurrect Confederate soldiers because they were traitors to the country, this establishment. Okay. That's a nice way of putting it. But they were a whole hell of a lot more than that. But this administration feel that is necessary to preserve its history and claiming it to be the history of the United States of America, the so-called attempts to find a more perfect union. I don't know how you find a more perfect union. Perfect is perfect. If you're moving towards perfection, you're moving towards perfection. You can't have something more perfect. Perfect defines the absolute. But in their efforts to move towards this new perfect, more perfect union, the way that they feel is going to get them there is to sanitize their history of all the wrongdoings and whitewash the history of all the wrongdoings that were done and perpetuated or the crimes that were committed on two groups of people, the indigenous people, which, by the way, also includes those who this country continues to defame. Those are the people who are in the southern borders, Mexico, Arizona, Texas. New Mexico, Texas, Arizona, California. Those places, where they have these borders, where they claiming that the people who are crossing these borders are illegal aliens, where prior to the 1800s, that was their land, and now they're illegal. You see them as illegal. They may see you as illegal. And some of the memes have been circulating around the airways in these social media streets. How can you call something illegal or people illegal while you're occupying, while you are claiming that you own stolen land? So they're making their efforts to try to preserve their history while they take ours away or make an attempt to take ours away. I'm reading the story. In the Washington Post. Trump plans to install Christopher Columbus statue outside the White House. The president has worked to recognize the explorer, saying Italian Americans should remember his efforts when they go to vote. Everything that this man does is transactional. He doesn't care about anybody but himself. He doesn't even care about his own damn children. So if you do something for him, he'll do something for you. Or if he seemingly does something for you, then you owe him something. So everything in his life is transactional. This is the life of a psychopath or sociopath. But anyway, President Trump is planning to install a statue of Christopher Columbus on White House grounds, according to three people with knowledge of the pending move, in his latest effort to remake the presidential campus and celebrate the famed controversial explorer. So when the story comes out and the truth comes out, and has been out for decades now about the crimes and the horrors that Christopher Columbus um, committed on indigenous people, not to mention spreading syphilis all over the damn place. But what crimes he committed against the indigenous people, and the story had come out about him and his efforts, or not his efforts, but him being the linchpin that started the slave trade, wiping out indigenous cultures in Central America and the Caribbeans, are responsible for wiping out the indigenous people in the Caribbeans, Central America. The story has been told, and this truth was undeniable. And it was so, the conviction was so heavy that they had to find ways to be able to back out of the celebration of Columbus Day. There's still some states that will not give up that day, but people with states have begun to understand how much of a tyrant this man was, and have proceeded to remove him out of the historical record. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think Germany celebrates Hitler's birthday. I don't think Italy celebrates Mussolini's birthday. If I'm wrong, someone will let me know. So you got all these people in this historical lineage of white men, of Europeans, who have committed crimes against humanity all up and down the damn board. And they're making efforts to try to preserve their culture, to preserve their history, because they feel that it's necessary to see themselves as these great people. So this man wants to resurrect a statue of the murderous Christopher Columbus, and then tout him as being this great man. Why? Because he could sail across the ocean? Well, African people have been doing that for centuries before there was any person called a damn Christopher Columbus. It was us it was our ancestors who taught the asshole how to sail. They wouldn't have been able to navigate anywhere if they didn't understand how to read or how to chart, or how to navigate the waters. If they did not have any understanding of charting the stars in the sky, we had already been here. And I know Dr. Van Sertiva's book might be controversial in the community, maybe, but he did some impeccable research and made the reference about we were here before Columbus. And if you don't believe that story, go out and get Before the Mayflower. I can't remember who the author of that was. Lerone Bennett. Go out and get his book. They're both parallel. Or go get David N. Hotep's book. Go out and get his book. The first Americans were African. Again, impeccable research. It was way before some damn Columbus. So you celebrating him, why? And we can't, you can celebrate him, a murderous tyrant, and we can't celebrate our own people? I mean, the campaign has become so aggressive that for the first time since 1978, 1978, 48 years ago, for the first time, the Kennedy Center is not going to host any Black American or Black history events for the first time since 1978. This is when the building was actually named in honor of John F. Kennedy, where this again, this sociopath decided he wanted to stick his name on an already um, defined and already what do they call it? Um, when you erect a memorial, I can't remember the terminology, but a memorial that's already been named for someone. He decides he wants to stick his name on it because he claimed that he saved the Kennedy Center, so he puts his name on the Kennedy Center up next to John F. Kennedy. Listen, this is what sociopaths do. Everything he does is great. So the first time in 48 years, there hasn't been any Black history events at the Kennedy Center, which is supposed to be the premier art center in the entire country. And they've been celebrating Black History Month since 1978. So if you all don't see a pattern that's happening here, then you are completely in denial. And I'm not talking about our people. If any people of any other ethnicity looks at my shows and you are still in denial that there is not blatant racism happening in this country, then you're in complete denial. Either that or you yourself can be seen as a racist, a dishonest one at that. Please like and share and subscribe. Black History Month Centennial channels angst over anti-DEI climate into education and free resources. So no, there's a bunch of articles that are out here speaking to their efforts to check out Black History Month. For academics, historians, and activists, the past year has been tumultuous in advocating the teaching of Black history in the United States. Despite last year's proclaiming February as a National Black History Month, President Donald Trump started his second term by claiming some African history lessons are meant to indoctrinate people into hating the country. The administration has dismantled Black history at national parks, most recently removing an exhibit on slavery in Philadelphia. The Black history advocates see the acts and their chilling effects as scary and so even good people are just quieter now. In the 100th years since the nation's earliest observations of the Black History Month, which began with Carter G. Woodson, which celebrated a week, the current political climate has energized civil rights organizations, artists, and academics. Well, we need to be energized even more because they are making attempts to first to do away with the history, with the roots of a mighty people, just so that they can subdue them and erase them out of history. So why do they do this? Make this note that Their attempts to wiping out Black history is not for to in to punish us because again, we are autonomous. We can teach our own history. And again, it should be our responsibility for teaching our history anyway, but they're not doing this for us. They're not doing this in spite or to spite us. They're not doing this to hurt us. They can't harm us by removing our history from public if we remain diligent. The objective is for their people not to know the history, for their children not to know the true history, because again, once you are introduced to the historical record that becomes factual, that creates questions. And if you are a humane person and you are empathetic to other people's plights, that forces you to sit down and ask questions. Well, why did you do this? Grandma, why did our people do this? Granddad, why did our people do this? Why, mom? Why, dad? Why? Why were you committing crimes of humanity against other people? Why? So if you can take out the historical record of the atrocities that were committed against the people, that exonerates them from the crimes that they committed. It's the same thing they're doing with Jan 6. It's the same thing they're trying to do with Epstein files. The playbook is being repeated over and over again. No originality. Try to do something new. Damn, the shit ain't working. Find another way to be able to lie to the people, because what you have been doing for these number of centuries, this shit ain't working. Your lies about you being a superior people over all the other people of the planet, that shit ain't working. Your attempts to suppress and oppress people just so that you can make attempts to stay on top and in control, that shit is crumbling fast. As you can see with the attempts of being able to control the political system. Thank you, beloved Petros. Peace and love to you. Thank you for joining. This is from the Hill. This is from the Hill. Steve Bannon, one of the feeble-minded president's top advisor. Brother Chago, blessings to you. 13 years of public education, we are indoctrinated. No doubt. To believe in and trust in an evil and ungodly empire. I would say more than 13 years, beloved. We matriculate, some of us are fortunate enough to matriculate all the way up to grad school, and we still get indoctrinated, even though through grad school. As Dr. Ben said, a PhD is, what did he say? Is more shit piled high and deep. He said BS is bullshit. MS is more bullshit, and a PhD is more bullshit piled high and deep. When we are indoctrinated into this country, yeah, no doubt, brother. Again, thank you for joining me. Steve Bannon, one of the feeble-minded president. I can't even call this man a president. One of the feeble-minded imbecile that's occupying the White House right now and claiming himself to be the free leader of the world. Steve Bannon is one of his top advisors. And if you all think that he's has no affiliation or that he's standing behind um, in the background just observing, this man he's been the architect, and he was the architect of his first administration, and he's still advising his second administration. This I mean, you talking about somebody you think Steve Miller's evil. Steve Bannon, I mean, he put Steve Miller compared to Steve Miller. It's gonna be compared to Steve Bannon. Steve Miller is a kindergartner. Steve Bannon was the architect that ushered Trump into the White House the first time, and he's still advising him. So this is what Steve Bannon had to say. This is in reference to the midterm elections. We're going to have ICE surround the polls. Former White House strategist and podcaster Steve Bannon suggested Tuesday that he wants to see immigration and customs enforcement officers surrounding the polls during the November's midterm elections. So this is this thing about immigration's ICE, or these ICE agents are they nothing but Trump's private army, these unqualified rogue imbeciles walking around with weapons, thinking they are these I forget the term that these top soldiers, but it's not important. But anyway, this is who they believe that they are, because they have these guns, these high profile rifles, and all this tactic gear where they can go out in the streets and harass people who do not have any weapons at all, and look at themselves as being these big people, these big men walking around in masked up. If you're truly a man, you take those masks off your face. But anyway, I digress. So he wants to put ICE agents. He wants to surround ICE agents in at polls during the midterm elections. And he says, "You're damn right. We're going to have ICE surround the polls come December." His comments come after President Trump doubled down on his support for nationalizing elections, telling reporters Tuesday he thinks Republicans should take over the voting at least 15 places. And if you think that this shit is a joke, everything that this man, now again, just keep in mind that he's not coming up with these ideas on his own. He has people whispering in his ear, and whatever they tell him, he'll do. So he'll make an attempt to try to have his private army surrounding the polls or the precincts, the voting precincts during the midterm elections. Their messaging is that they want to make sure that there's no illegal aliens voting. They know illegal. I mean, they know that the voting system itself has been running consistently where people, if you are not registered, you're not voting. I don't care who you are. If you aren't registered, if they can't confirm and verify that you're a registered voter, you are not going to vote. Even the ones whom they went down in Atlanta, in Fulton County, illegal. So the courts will end up throwing that out and confiscated the voter records of those in another black county, because they want to try to determine whether the people who were voting in Fulton County were illegal or not. It's illegal. That shit will get thrown out in the courts. But according to the record itself, through the investigation itself, it was out of hundreds of thousands of people that voted in, I forget how it was, how the numbers played out, but it was hundreds of thousands, or the numbers may not be right. But what it boiled down to was that they found that they were only able to find 10 people who were illegally registered to vote. And out of those 10 people, only one of them voted. So they're creating this mishgod of confusion so that people can buy into the narrative, and unassuming people, uneducated people can buy into this narrative that there's illegal voting and across the entire country. We're not actually in the South, other in southern states, these 15 states that he's talking about, where he thinks that the Republicans should take over, or coincidentally happen to be states that did not vote for him in either election. So because, again, dealing with sociopathic white psychopathy, he believes that he is the king and that everybody should bow down to him. And if no one voted for him, then something's wrong. It had to be staged, it had to be fixed. People were lying, and there had to be corruption across the board because people didn't vote for him. Let's get this fact straight, Trump. Nobody fucking likes you. All right? Even the people who are bound down kissing your ring don't like you. Unless they got some crumbs that are coming, unless you have promised them some crumbs that are coming off your table after you then fleeced and grifted money from just about every damn body. Nobody fucking likes you, okay? But anyway, his argument is that because these 15 states didn't vote for him, the Republicans need to take over and nationalize voting. We need to wake up, because everything that has been talked about, every bit of deviant plan that he's couldn't help to leak out of his mind, every bit of it is being enacted on the people. And we need to stand up, and we need to fight, particularly us in our community. And we need to beat this shit back. And we have to do it by first understanding out the role that we've played in building this country and the significance of our history. And once we continue to make it an importance to teach our history, that gives us the information that allows us to combat a rogue institution that has promoted lies, death, and destruction to people of color throughout the entire country. There were some other things I wanted to cover, but that's cool. I'll pass on that. But I mentioned about the slave memorial that's it's up in Philly. This was the president's home. I said, the president's home of the kidnappers, George and Martha Washington. There are 2 petitions that are out. If you go to change.org, there's a petition. There's 2 petitions that can be signed, because the city of Philadelphia is forcing the federal government to put those memorials back on those plaques back on the wall of the president's house in Philly. It was honoring 9 enslaved ancestors who were held captive by George and Martha Washington. So if you go to change.org, the one petition is Tell the Truth, Restore the President's House Slavery Memorial. And the other petition is Protect Slavery History at Independence Park and all U.S. nation parks or U.S. national parks. And I don't know what I can. Let me see if I can share the screen real quick. Um, let's see, slave empire. Hmm. I pulled this up this morning. Now I can't get it. Wait a minute. Search. There it is. Slave. Hmm. Um, mm. All right. So now I'm not successful in finding the petition. But anyway, if you go to change.org, and I'm asking those who are my listeners tonight and those who's to um, find this on the archive. If you go to change.org and put in tell the truth, restore the president's house, slave memorial, that petition should come up and go out and sign that petition. I was going to do it live online, but I can't find the petition now, but I'll do it after I get off the show. But go out and sign that petition. And, we need to just now it's time that we need to stand up. We can't continue to BS around with this man and his administration and these white nationalists, these white psychopaths who are running this country right now are serious. And it'll be a travesty for us if we just continue to sit back and watch this shit happen. I know that we haven't been out protesting and doing things like that, and we haven't. We've done enough, we believe, throughout the decades to petition and protest the things that have happened to not just us in this country, but to women, to other people of color, and to women, including white women, have benefited from the protests and the progress that we have forced the government's hand in uh, to put civil rights laws on the books so that people can have a better life to live in this country. It was a plethora of people who benefited from our efforts to do that. So we've done our work. Now it's time, those who are out there protesting, be serious about it. Take in the heart of the lion that's happening out in Minnesota, where those people were standing out in minus one, in minus in sub freezing temperatures, sub-zero temperatures out there protesting because they're serious about the commitment of getting ice out of their community. But let's continue to band together and and make a stance to push back this crazy shit that's happening here. Just because we can make the reference that he's only here for 4 years, but who's coming behind him? I mean, if someone the caliber of Donald Trump, who has no understanding how to govern anything, the man bankrupted a damn casino. He's supposed to be this intelligent business person or have this intelligent business mind, and he bankrupts a casino. How the hell you bankrupt a casino? A casino is designed for you to make money. And he bankrupt a casino. Everything that he's touched, every business that he has had his hands in has failed. The only thing has had some resistance to his inability to govern his own business have been these hotels that he seemingly puts his name on all over the place. And he's had some success with that, but everything this man has touched has gone to shit. And he has his hand in the governance structure of the United States, and look at the results. It's going to shit. And people try to warn him. Not warn him. People try to warn us of his inability to govern. Going back in the beginning when he ran for president the first time against Hillary Clinton, and she tried to tell, regardless of how problematic she was, at least she understood how to govern. She tried to tell you this man doesn't have any ability or any pedigree to be able to govern the United States. He's a con artist, and he's conned his way into building his empire, his money empire, back up again by fleecing the money off the government and making backdoor deals to make billions of dollars while he's sitting in the White House. So anyway, tomorrow's show, this would sort of be a continuation, because I'm dealing with Black history still, but I'm dealing with the Black history of herbal medicine. Is that what I call it? Let me see. Where is my video? What I title this? I need to start writing this stuff down, to be honest with you. Because when I'm out here talking, I mean, some of this, my mind continues to race, and it's going a mile a minute. But anyway, so it'll be episode 41 of the Health Walk, the Black history of herbalism, holding on to our roots. Again, same thing that I just discussed here tonight. We need to hold on to our roots. So, join me tomorrow, 7:30 Eastern time, live here on Spiritual Pathways Holistic Healing YouTube channel. On the Health Walk, episode 41, we will have a discussion about holding on to our roots, Black history of herbalism. And as always, I enjoy you being here tonight. Thank you all for those who are here. Thank you for the continued love and support that you're giving me and on Moments of Malik, and me and my partner in Power, Oriomi, on the Health Walk. Thank you for being supporting all our efforts and everything that we do. This is the reason why we show up. This is the reason why we do and are committed to continue to do what it is that we do, is because of the love that you all give us. Excuse me. So join us back here tomorrow, 7:30 Eastern time, for episode 41 on the Health Walk, where we will continue a portion of this conversation about holding on to the roots, holding on to our roots. But until then, until we meet again, peace and love all the time.